Everybody, this is your old pal, Uncle Hondo, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated and host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Joined now by my assistant beat writer, the one and only, the great Ezekiel Trezevant. We are here at Allegiant Stadium, literally in front of both of us. We're sitting in the press boxes, Allegiant Stadium. If you hear any noises, it's because the cleaning crew is cleaning, and it's late into the night, but we're grinding, and we're going to break down with a complete recap of the Raiders' 24-24 uh, tie with the San Francisco 49ers. Zeke, a couple of things I want to address right at the beginning. I understand fans, and the Raiders have lost both games, and the quarterback play outside of Minnesota has not been good. And you turn around tonight, and San Francisco's playing their starters, and the Raiders are playing some of their second and some of their third string to start. They didn't look great to start. Nobody's denying that. But the moment you saw San Francisco put their second and third string guys in, the Raiders matched up very well. Well, the point I'm getting to is you have to understand everything when you're evaluating preseason is in context, is it not?
Oh yeah, 1000%. Especially when you're talking about a preseason game where the other team's starters were playing against your backups, and for me personally, I can speak for myself. It opened even my eyes to how big of a difference there is between the starters and the backup and the third stringers, if you will. So, when it comes to that, you can never take that into too much consideration, especially tonight. I mean, yeah, Debo Sanders out there on second stringers. I mean, and you
Yeah,
saw what
Debo
happened,
Samuel.
right?
I'm like, what?
Yeah, huh?
I said, yeah, I'm out there looking. There's Debo Samuel, and I'm like, what?
Exactly, and George Kittle is another one. I saw 85 catch the ball. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? So yeah, a vast difference between the first and second stringers. Definitely have to keep that in mind for sure.
And I think, we're not trying to make excuses. But when you're got Debo and Brock Purdy and these guys, and they're going against literally second and third string guys, if you don't in your evaluation put some bearing of importance on that or some weight, you're just not being fair. And I think that's something we always try to do is be fair.
Yeah, and it's one thing for us to say it, but at the same time, I know numbers are just numbers, but the scoreboard said the same thing too, right? When the starters for the 49ers were out on the field against the backups, I think they got out to a 10-0 or a 17-0 jump, or a 17-3 start, and then after the backups for the 49ers got in, you saw it become a much closer game. So it's not just us speaking right now. The score said that as well.
You want to know what amazed me is I was told by a source with the 49ers that they were going to be playing their starters. I expected the Raiders to lose by a significant margin. You're dealing with a team that just played in a Super Bowl in this building that plays at a very, very high level going against the Raiders about almost maybe not 50-50, but 60-40 second and third stringers. I expected them to find themselves much deeper in the hole. To me, and again, it's preseason. We understand the regular season, it's just win, baby. But understanding the context, to me, this was not as bad as people were making it sound. It doesn't mean it was perfect. We're not saying it is, but to me, I didn't see it as the sky was falling as bad as a lot of people. Did you?
No, no, not at all. And I think, obviously we've talked all preseason about how, most teams are running a vanilla playbook on offense and on defense. But even with that said, the 49ers still have the players even with their vanilla playbook, they have the playbook to make your head spin. And after the backups kind of got going, and kind of figured things out, they started playing a little bit better, right? And I think that's all you can really ask for. And honestly, for where the Raiders are in terms of trying to build depth behind their starters, I think it was valuable for their second and third stringers to be playing against starters that were just playing in the Super Bowl here a couple of months ago.
All right, you and I spent a lot of time in the locker room. I really encourage everyone to go listen to the interviews from the locker room. We didn't put them all up today. We'll put the rest up probably tomorrow or Sunday. But let's talk first. Let's just go down the line. Let's talk about some guys. I'm going to make a bold prediction right now. All right. I'm not going to make a prediction. I'm just going to share something that I had whispered in my ear by a little birdie. Um, I think there's a big chance. I'm not saying it's official, but I'm saying there's a big chance the Raiders only keep two quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. That's huge. I'd love to know what you think.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, in terms of just logistically, right? for the most part, to my knowledge, Gardner has never really had too much of an injury history that comes to mind for me. And Aiden showed, last season, even as a rookie, that he's relatively durable. So in terms of just logistics, it makes sense. Save that extra spot if you can. And don't use it on the quarterback when the two quarterbacks you have shown plenty of durability during their time in the league.
I'm just going to make a random guess. If they keep two quarterbacks and both of them were to get injured, we may see Jakobi Meyers at quarterback.
That is, listen, I would love to see it. I think Jakobi would be great.
That's all we're saying.
All we're saying.
We're leaving it right there. Okay. Let's talk about young Mr. Charles Snowden. We've been talking about him at Sports Illustrated and on this podcast the entire training camp. I mean, he's a big, wide body guy. He's 6'7". I'm going to look real quick. I'm going to get his weight, but he's a big guy. He's 6'7". He doesn't weigh that much. He's only 245 pounds, but he is. And I know you're going to say, well, I was a defensive end and you're 5'10" and 145 pounds. But by the way, one of our listeners tonight emailed me and said, Hondo, you and Zeke both look like big guys on the show. And I've seen you in person. Can I get a picture of you and Zeke together? So I think we're going to get one with you standing in front of me. Just don't be a big wall blocking me out, okay?
Listen, I'll do my best.
I'll let you stand in front of me so they can see me. Anyways, but we've been, this guy's built like Zamir White. He's just got muscles in his body in places I've never even seen on mine. He's just ripped. Came in here last year. I think it was somewhere week 12, 13, 14. He just keeps showing up.
100%.
Great work ethic. Phenomenal kid. I really encourage everyone to watch the interview or listen to the interview I did with him. Just a salt of the earth kid. Works hard, keeps his mouth shut. And I'm going to tell you a story that he and I talked about tonight. And I think he was surprised I saw this. It was about the first, second, or third day in pads in Costa Mesa. And he got blown up. Somebody made him look silly. And Max Crosby ran to him, put his chin up, talked to him. And ever since then, he took off. This is a guy played great tonight. He's been steady throughout all of camp. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to give my, final prediction here coming up in a little bit, but I think that young man's got a super good chance of making this roster. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think he's another one of those, developmental pieces, if you will, depth pieces, if you will. And if you don't mind, I'll also point this out. You noted it. The Max Crosby cosign is priceless. In terms of, a defensive end, a defensive lineman. And you would think, oh, yeah, that's obvious. But I think it's more than most people may realize. And then you got to also think, not only is it priceless in terms of what it can mean for a player to a coaching staff, but what it can mean for a player's confidence. Snowden's not necessarily the only one that Max is co-signed. And the other players, Stone, that he's also co-signed. Both of those players, right after Max gives them the co-sign, their play just gets better and better and better and better. So, shout out to Max in terms of hyping up those younger guys, getting their mind right, giving them that confidence. In terms of Snowden, you hit it right on the head again. In terms of tonight, he just pops, right? There were multiple times you looked out on the field tonight and it was like, who made that play? It was Snowden, right? So not necessarily.
How many times? You and I sit right next to each other. How many times I'm like, who made that play?
Multiple times. It's multiple times. So, and again, he just shows up, and you don't necessarily need the guy with the biggest name out there all the time, right? You just want somebody who does the job and does it correctly. And that's what Stone has done, pretty much every time he's gotten the chance. So, and he's shown the growth, right? That's what this is about. That's what the preseason is about, especially for younger players, is just showing the growth. You're not going to be perfect, but just show that growth, and that's what he's done.
I agree with you 100%. So let's talk about J-Rob, Janarius Robinson. We talked about him all off season here at Sports Illustrated. Came into camp, shined a little bit early, took a little bit of a dip, but finished strong. He was so good tonight. The Raiders didn't play Kuntz. They didn't play Tyree. They didn't play Max, but he was out there. And quite frankly, I thought he looked really good several times. Made plays, did things that don't show up in the stat sheet. But I'm going to tell you what, I love your thoughts on Mr. Robinson.
Yeah, J Rob is growing as well. And there's a couple of plays he made tonight where honestly he looked like somebody who may I don't want to say he should not have played tonight. That's not quite what I'm saying, but he looked like he was a lot further along than a lot of the other guys he was on the field with. He's shown a lot of progression during his time as well. And I actually wrote an article earlier this offseason asking if J Rob was technically the next Malcolm Kuntz in terms of just needing a chance to shine, just needing an opportunity to get more reps on the field to actually get that experience. A lot of guys just need more experience on the field to reach their full potential, like a Malcolm Kuntz. I think J Rob might be that guy for the Raiders right now.
So let's talk about Snowden. He had 2 tackles, and but he impacted a lot more plays than that. J Rob had 1 tackle, but he impacted more plays. That's why sometimes you have to watch and analyze, especially on the line, because these guys are making plays sometimes that impact. I mean, Amari Gainer had 10 tackles, but how many did he have because of J Rob and Snowden, where they're eating guys up and those linebackers are allowed to go feast? We're not minimizing him. We're going to talk about him in a minute. But I think you got to talk about Janarius. You got to talk about Charles, because I told you coming into tonight on my podcast, I'm watching the defensive line close, and I those two really popped, didn't they?
Yeah, and to your point, Amari Gainer actually, thanked those guys in the locker room afterwards. He mentioned the line in front of him.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, yes, sir. He definitely shouted them out, and the guys behind him as well. He credited those guys that kind of, ate up space, if you will, and ate up a lot of those blocks and cleaned up the lanes for Amari Gainer to kind of go in there and do what he does. So, and in terms of the defensive line, listen, I know we joke around about, my time playing defensive line, but it's true, right? In terms of a lot of times the defensive linemen, what they do does not show up on the stat sheet. Last season, one of the big players like that was Tyree. It wasn't always pretty, but a lot of the things that Tyree did and the way he impacted the game, it didn't show up on the stat sheet. That's what happened tonight with Snowden, in terms of in J-Rob as well. So it happens often that what the defensive lineman does doesn't necessarily show up, and that's what happened.
You realize once people see a picture of us, they're going to understand the last time you played defensive end was on Madden.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're going to realize why I'm not in the National Football League.
Can you imagine if I got my meat hooks on you, you were going to go nowhere?
Yeah, no, listen, at all. That's why I hung them up after high school. I knew my lane, and that was not it.
All right, let's talk about a guy that I thought had a great night. I'm so proud of this guy. I genuinely really like him personally. I know you agree with me. We're going to have an article coming about him, but let's talk about Matthew Butler. He made some plays. There was one play in particular. He shoots the gap. He's got his hand on the center. He pushes the center into the other guard. The other guard has to double team him. He's taking up 3 offensive linemen. No stats going to show it, but tonight he just pinned his ears back and he played like a house of fire.
He literally, that play you're talking about, he just blew the whole thing up. I mean, that's how I would sum it up. He just made a whole mess in the backfield. As we all know, penetration kills anything an offense is really trying to do, and that's what he did on that play. And he did it on a bunch of other plays as well. And just the consummate professional, right? He's a nice guy on and off the field. And anytime we have a question, he's great with us. So he performed well tonight. We're expecting big things from him this season, more progression, more growth from him this season as well.
All right, let's talk about the rushing D. We touched it earlier. The rushing D has not been fantastic in camp. No one's pretending that it is. But there are a couple things I think you've got to mention here. So let me just read these stats off to you. The 49ers tonight, they ran for 131 yards. I mean, you want to keep them under 100, but it's not like they ran for 252 or anything like that. The Raiders were very vanilla. And so to me, I don't think it was great. I'm not trying to pretend that it was. I'm not being a Kool-Aid salesman. But I also think in context, when you've got your 2s and 3s going against their 1s, you got to put this in a little bit better context. I don't think it was great, but I certainly don't think the sky was falling. The vanilla-ness of it, who was going against who, to me, again, not great. Even AP said it's got to be better. But internally, they're not super worried about it. So I don't think it's something that we should convey to the fans that they should be worried about. Agree or disagree?
I agree that we should not worry about it. I don't think it's time to worry about it. I do think it's something worth keeping an eye on, simply
Absolutely.
because that's one of those things in terms of the running game, in terms of the run defense, that hey, a couple of big gashes here from the running back, and that small hole can turn into a big gash, and you don't want that to happen. So I think all in all, right, it's the preseason. Obviously, we've said it over and over again: vanilla offenses, vanilla defenses. The defense is not, whether it's the starters, second string, or the third string, they're not running anything extravagant in terms of defensive plays. So as of right now, no need to worry. But I think come week 2, week 3, week 4, if opposing teams start running on the Raiders defense, we're going to look back at the preseason and say that we had the signs there the whole time.
I agree with you. And the thing is, there are 3 teams of your first 4: Cleveland, Baltimore, and the Bolts, that are all run first teams. Carolina doesn't do anything good, but the other 3, those are legitimate running teams. Everything you need to know about the Raiders rushing defense, you're going to know by the end of week 4. Fair or unfair?
Oh, listen, we're going to know a lot about the Raiders team in general after the first 4 weeks of the season. So it's going to be exciting. But yes, like you said, in terms of the running defense, we're going to know very early, how big of a deal it is or is not. Because, just like we're paying attention to it, I'm sure those opposing teams are paying attention to it as well.
All right, let's talk about Tyreek McAllister. We've talked about him throughout camp. So I asked him tonight. I mean, I get my 40 timed with a sundial. And I asked him, what is the best 40 you've run? He told me a 4.29. That kid just turns on the jets. And the thing that really sticks out to me is it's one thing to have straight line speed. He can stop on a dime, give you 9 cents change. And I don't know how he does it. I'm being completely truthful. He can switch directions without any loss of speed, even though he's a little feller. I mean, I don't even know how big he is. I'm gonna look here. But even though he's not the biggest guy in the world, I don't know how he just stops, and he doesn't really stop. I mean, it's where I'm from in Michigan. We call it a Michigan stop, when you kind of pull up to a stop sign, but you don't really come to a full stop. He just kind of, he looks like that. My kids like this video game. It's about a raccoon. It's a blue raccoon, and Sonic the Raccoon, I think it is. I'm trying to remember its name.
Sonic the Hedgehog?
Is it a hedgehog?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay. Anyways, I mean, he's like Tigger on Winnie the Pooh. Okay, you can tell I have a toddler at home. He's like Tigger. I mean, he's just everywhere. That young man's fun to watch, isn't he?
Listen, so you actually took the words literally right out of my mouth at the end with the last thing you said. Fun to watch. As soon as the ball hit his hands on that, I believe it was the punt return that he had for the touchdown. Like you said, he was one direction, then he's the next direction. Really didn't lose too much speed, and it was just fun to watch, and it was a game-changing play, right? And it got the crowd back into it, and it adds to special teams, right? And that's what he's known for, is what he brings to the special teams unit. Obviously, he's a wide receiver. I understand that, but he's versatile, right? And that speed, like they say, speed kills, right? And you got to think that one punt return in an actual game, that can be the difference between winning and losing. Yeah, that could determine a win or loss, and that one win or loss can determine whether or not you make the playoffs. So he's going to be a good asset to have for the Raiders, one way or the other. And like you said, that speed is undeniable.
I had a great interview with him down in the locker room, and he's just such a pleasant, wonderful gentleman, just a great kid. But I'm going to tell you something. Now, almost everybody on this team I interview, I'm looking down at, and none of them do I have to look up to. Some of them I get to look eye to eye. They list him at 5'10". If he's top 5'10", I'm a Victoria's Secret thong bikini model. Because how tall are you?
Hey, listen. I'm a good I'm a healthy 5'11". And I think he might be about. I'm trying to recall because we were in the locker room as well. I think he's about 5'11" or so. I think he's up there.
They got him listed at 5'10", and I'll bet you $1 to it, don't it? All right, but anyways, he's just fun to watch. And The kid just has great hands, and all he's done is just keep showing up. Just keep showing. And that's all you can do. You know, when you're a young kid, think about this. Let me grab this real quick. So think about this kid, okay? He's from Charleston, West Virginia, is where he played school at Charleston in West Virginia. Okay. He's from Dillon, South Carolina. He's just looking for a chance. We talked about this with Britton Brown and Sincere McCormick when camp started. We talked about it with Anthony Brown. You just have to be there that when you get your chance, you have to shine. Some guys just can't handle the spotlight. Some guys can. Tyreek McAllister, I'm going to say it right now, and everyone's going to laugh because he's not a monster. That young man is the best compliment I can give him. He's a football player now. And that young man, I think he'd be playing with a leather helmet if he was born in the 30s and going up against some of the old guys. This is how much I think of Tyreek McAllister. Vince Lombardi would have tattooed him on his shoulder.
He's definitely a football player, for sure. He was
He's
meant to
tough.
play. Yeah, he was meant to play the game of football. You know, and like you said, I like the way that he just kind of keeps his head down and he makes the most of the opportunities that he was given, right? Almost every time you touch the ball, you're hoping that he would take it to the house. You know, after that second touchdown, you know, every time he had a chance, everybody kind of wanted him to get the hat trick. So it's hard to root against the guy. He's a skilled player and he brings a lot to the team.
I'm not going to say who because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but in training camp, I think it was the third or fourth day of pads. He's coming across on a short route, and a defensive lineman kind of in his way, and he just whopped. And I thought, he just ran into a guy that's probably twice his size.
Yeah, he loves the game. You can tell he loves the game.
He loves it, man. He's just one of those kids, man. He pops somebody and he doesn't care if he gets up with a concussion and a broken arm. He's just happy because he loves the game. I love that. He's my kind of guy. He just, you know what I mean? He's the kind of guy that goes to Thanksgiving dinner at his parents' home and just grabs a leg, says, "I'll take this, Mom."
He's a ball player. He's a ball player for sure. And you could tell he's determined, just kind of being around him for a couple of minutes in the locker room after the game. You can tell, one of the media members asked him, "Hey, were you thinking about, trying to get a roster spot, during the game?" And he was very honest. He was like, "Hey, no, during the game, I was not thinking about that. Before the game, I was." And that says a lot that he's able to compartmentalize and focus on what he needs to focus on. So he's definitely meant to play the game of football.
All right. I want to talk about Sam Webb for a minute. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I like him a lot, and I've been rooting for him. But like we talked about, when the lights are on, you got to make those plays. Tonight, he makes a big mistake, gives up a huge play, but runs 65 yards to make a touchdown saving tackle. That's the yin and the yang with Webb. The big mistake, but the great effort. The great effort is what's kept him here. I'm not rooting against him at all, but it's those mistakes. You love the effort, but it's the mistake that causes the need for the effort. I think he is squarely on the bubble. What are your thoughts on Webb? I just don't see him making this roster. I think he'll make the practice, possibly. I don't even know that that's a given, but I don't see him making the roster. Love your thoughts on Sam. And I love the kid. I'm not picking on him.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you 100%. I think it's more likely practice squad. Obviously he's definitely on the bubble, but you hit it right on the head, right? Like the effort, you want to commend the effort, right? But
love the kid.
Right, you can't deny that, but at the same time, had the effort been there, and I'm just speaking about this specific play, had the effort been there, on the front side of the play, there would be no need to sprint the 65 yards. So, we're talking about the NFL, right? That one small mistake can be the difference between you making it and not making it, So, he's had a little bit of time to prove himself, and he maybe just needs a little bit more growth, a little bit more development, and we'll see if that happens with him.
Let's talk about another guy that, again, I thought he had a good night. Was he perfect? I don't think any of these guys were perfect. They're second and third stringers and fourth. Some of these guys are going to literally be bagging groceries next week. And I don't mean that as a slam. I'm trying to put it in context. And they were going against, a team that played in the Super Bowl last year that has an elite offense. Byron Young, I just was super impressed. He had a big sack tonight. Effort was there all night. He played a lot of snaps. I thought Byron Young, again, nobody was perfect, but I was impressed with Young. Would love your thoughts.
Yeah, again, we actually kind of talked about this one-on-one after, he made it, a couple of plays tonight. Potential's there, right? Potential's there. I think the good, and it might be a little bit of a bad thing, but the good thing about it for him is that he's got a lot of veterans around him, in front of him, in terms of on the depth chart, a lot of veterans around him that can help him in terms of growing as a player. But you've seen him continue to make more and more plays, and I think he's another one of those guys that he just needs to get on the field. He needs to get on the field. And then once he gets on the field, he's going to continue to learn. He's going to continue to build on that.
I talked with Charles Snowden in the locker room about that very specific thing, but not with Byron, but with him. I said, you made plays in camp, but tonight when you were able to get a bunch of reps, you made a lot of them. That's why you have to make this is something I wish more people understood about training camp. You're playing a lot, but your reps are limited. That's why when you get those reps, man, it is precious, isn't it?
Oh, 1,000%, because you don't know when you'll get the next one, or if you'll get a next one, especially if you're one of those depth pieces, especially at a specific position like defensive line. So you have to make the most of it, because you don't know if you'll ever get one of those again.
We're going to talk about a guy that I thought was going to make the roster, and I'm not sure right now. It's a guy that made some plays early, but I think he's on the bubble. Let's talk about Christian Wilkerson. I like him. This isn't personal. He's made some plays. He hasn't made some plays. There's been a lot of guys, and we're going to get into this position by position in a minute. Sorry for all the noise. They're working here at Allegiant Stadium, but he's a guy that I just keep looking at, Zeke, and I'm thinking, man, he's almost played himself onto the bubble. If I had to pick now, I would say 51% he makes it. But when you start looking at McAllister and
Guyton?
Huh?
Are you talking about Guyton? Is that what you're about to say? I'm guessing.
Who? I didn't hear who you just said.
You were trying to name a second receiver. Is that what you're?
Yeah, Ramel Keaton.
Okay, gotcha. I was just trying to guess who you were saying. My apologies.
Yeah, but I mean, again, there's just some guys. We're going to get into more anyways, but I just thought that was interesting. And, our job is this is the hard part. This is why it's, our job is to call it the way we see it. And Christian Wilkerson, I just think, you've been with me in camp, and we'll just look at each other and go, wow, great play. Then the next time, kind of like a Sam Webb moment, like, remember last training camp, he looked great. And then couldn't translate that into games. It's just no dislike of him. It's just a reality. All right, let's talk about another kid. And this is a young man, struggled in his rookie year, because that's what rookies do. Very few come in and play well. But, tonight, about the last 10 days of camp, he's been making plays. Tonight, he had a big interception. Chris Smith.
Yeah. Listen, like you said, Chris, he made that big interception today. And again, once he finally got on the field, and tonight specifically, playing against the starters from the 49ers, they were targeting him early on. They were throwing his way. They were throwing his direction multiple times. And as he started to pick it up, he started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. So, spoke to him in the locker room afterwards. He pointed out Coach Alexander has been helping him out. He said the game has slowed down for him. And Chris, he has a potential to grow into something special over time, but he just has to get on the field.
All right, I'm going to make another big prediction. I think this young man is going to make the roster. I didn't have him making it when he came into camp, but I think he's played his way onto it. He's a rookie. He's a UDFA. How about young Mr. Amari Gainer out of North Carolina, the college, but out of Tallahassee? And big shout out to my buddy, former All-American, former Denver Bronco wide receiver, the great Herb Haygood, who told me when he was coming into camp, he goes, H, this guy's going to make your team. And I think he has. Amari Gainer led the team in tackles tonight. Boy, does he look good.
100%. 12 tackles altogether tonight. 10 of those were solo. Played very, very well tonight. And you know how much I love the linebacker position in terms of, watching the game and watching how they play. Amari played so well tonight. In terms of, being a depth piece behind, the linebackers the Raiders already have, he's going to be a great, great piece to have back there over time for sure.
All right, let's dig into the roster a little bit. I told you I think there's a good chance they're only going to keep 2. I'm not reporting it as factual. I'm just telling you that is in the mindset, in the thinking process of the Raiders. I think you probably have an idea where I heard that they were thinking about it. I think you'd agree that's a pretty good person to hear it from. But let's talk a little bit about it. So I want to talk about a couple positions. Guyton. Does Tom Telesco say, hey, this is my guys from the Bolts. I know him. Let's keep him? Or does he say, listen, I got a chance to go with a younger UDFA and Ramel, or I think McAllister's made it. And so if they only keep 6, you're going to keep Devontae. You're going to keep Jacoby, who's the best offensive player in this team. You're going to keep DJ Turner. You're going to keep Trey Tucker. So if you're going to keep Tyreek, which I think you are, then you got 3 receivers competing for one spot. Ramel, Christian Wilkerson, Jalen Guyton. That's if they only keep 6. Now, if they take an extra quarterback, they're going to have a position available, which I think they will probably use on the line, probably. Give me your thoughts. Who do you think makes this roster?
So this is what I'll say, and we've talked about this, you and I and a couple of other media members and I talked about this as well. Personally, I feel like Telesco is going to keep Guyton. I think it's the NFL. I don't think he would have brought. I understand decisions still have to be made even after you bring players in. I get that. I just don't think Telesco would have brought somebody that he's had a relationship with in just to let him go in a couple of weeks. That's just me. I think humans have feelings. Humans are empathetic, and I think Guyton was brought in for a reason. And I think, Guyton, he looked decent tonight too. He didn't do anything, magnificent, don't get me wrong, but I do think he'll be, a good addition to the team. So I think that's which way Telesco's going to lean. I did hear, another person tell me that Telesco's not the type to make a decision based off of personal, alliances, which could probably be true. I see it going either way. But if you ask me, in my opinion, I think Guyton is probably going to make it.
Yeah, I think there's a good shot he makes it, but he played tonight. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of guys who played tonight and played a lot who I think were playing for their jobs. It's going to be really interesting to see. Let's talk real quick about Carter Bradley. Will he clear waivers so they can put him on the practice squad? I think he will.
I think he will too. Off the top of my head, I think he will. But he looked okay. He did look okay tonight.
All right, let's talk about this. I predicted they were going to take 10 defensive linemen. All right? That could change. It could take 11, or they could take more offensive linemen if they only take 2 quarterbacks. Well, let's talk about it. We know Max, Kuntz, Tyree, and J-Rob are going to make the team. Okay? At defensive tackle, you got Byron Young, Matthew Butler, Adam Butler, Christian Wilkins, John Jenkins. That's 9. So does Snowden beat out Nesta?
Yes.
Because Nesta is a defensive tackle. Snowden is a defensive end. But you got Tyreek that can play inside and out.
Both. Exactly.
So what do you think happens there? Does Nesta make this team?
I think Snowden beats him out. Like you said, I think that's where you lean on Tyree's versatility. I mean, you spent the first round draft pick on him partially because he can play inside and out. So I think they're gonna try to maximize the use that they get out of Tyree, and that's going to also help with him growing as a player as well. So I do think Snowden wins out. I also think that I think they're taking Max's long-term durability in account, and I do think they're going to try to get more of those guys behind him some extra playing time, even if it's just a couple of plays here and a couple of plays there, to try to help extend Max's career for sure.
Yeah, they have to get Max a blow. He can't just play as much as he did. That's just not wise. All right, let's talk about linebacker. And again, these numbers I'm giving you were before I was hearing that they may take 2 quarterbacks. Okay? So I thought they would take 5 linebackers: Robert Spillane, Diablo, Tommy freaking Eichenberg, Luke Masterson, and Amari Burney. I think Amari Gainer's going to make this team. So I don't think they would take 6 linebackers. They could. If Gainer makes the team and they stick with 5 linebackers, is Amari Burney out?
So I think Amari Burney has,
or Luke Masterson.
I think they're going to keep Luke Masterson. I think they're going to
I
keep
do
Luke.
too.
I think they're going to keep
I do
Luke.
too.
I think Amari Burney will be the odd man out. Unfortunately, he didn't necessarily do anything wrong necessarily, but Gainer just looked really, really good. And then I also think that to a certain degree that, hey, last season Spillane played 97% of the team's defensive snaps, right? And I think Diablo is going to play a large portion of the snaps as well.
And freaking Eichenberg's going to get some plays because they can't let Spillane do what Max did.
Exactly. So I think that's just going to leave an odd man out when it comes to it, unfortunately.
So it's going to be interesting if they keep 6. But here's the deal: if they go with 2 quarterbacks, I believe they're going to keep the extra guy on the line, offense or defense, which brings us to a young Mr. Will Putnam. This is a guy like McClendon Curtis last year. They just don't think they can hide him on the practice squad. And they didn't think they could with McClendon. They rolled the dice last year and lost him. So when you look at Will Putnam, could they keep him saying, listen, we know he's not going to do a lot this year. He's just not. But we think he's going to do a lot down the road. We want to teach him to play all of the interior line, not just center. We keep him. Will Putnam's going to be a name to watch, isn't it?
100%. And I think because of what happened last year, I think the Raiders are going to be a little bit more inclined to make sure that they don't risk losing him this time, or risk losing Putnam this season. So I think they're going to keep him.
All right, so let's finish this. Let's talk about camp's over now. Preseason's over. So let's dig in. Tuesday, they announced the 53-man roster. Overall, quarterback is the most important position, and the Raiders have a lot of question marks. The advantage that they have is that both men, Gardner and Aiden, have done it at the highest level, which is the NFL. So you're not asking guys to do something. For example, if they were running with Carter Bradley, you're hoping that he does something, but he's done nothing in the NFL heretofore to prove it. But you got 2 guys who have demonstrated you the ability to do it. So you're not betting on blue sky. But anytime your most important position is not settled, I think it's reason for concern. The Raiders coming in expected both men to be better than they were. Both men were disappointing, but they're not disappointed in both men. It just disappointed in the play. I have to believe, and because I have proof that they can do it, that one of them will emerge. And hey, you and I have no dog in this fight. We both love Gardner. We both love Aiden as men. And our goal is, I just hope one of them works out. Gardner obviously is going to get the first shot. I'm not rooting against him in the least bit. I'm not rooting against Aiden. I'm not a fan, but I root for good people, and they're both good people. But my point is anytime you come out of training camp in the National Football League, a quarterback-dominated league, a league that if you were to take a blood sample of the NFL, it would say quarterback, 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 quarterback. Anytime you're coming out and you got quarterback questions, I don't think you can give your camp anything other than a C. Am I being fair, or am I way off base?
Yeah, listen. It's hard to grade it any better than a C if you're not overly confident in the quarterback situation, for sure, right? And that's just being fair and keeping it right down the middle of the road. I think it would be unfair to say anything opposite of that, right? It's hard to give a team an A or a B on a camp, and they're not in the quarterback situation is still kind of up in the air or unsure, however you want to word it. So yeah, I think what you said in terms of grading it a C is fair. This is a quarterback driven league. That's hands down, unequivocally the most important position, especially the NFL. And time will tell how good the quarterbacks will be for the Raiders this year.
Okay, let me just ask you, because both men have demonstrated an ability to do it in this league, I am not a doom and gloom guy. I've been doing this long enough and I've been around enough coaches who have been successful that they've taught me how they judge. I expect one of them to emerge. Do you?
Oh, yes. Over now, it might take 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks for them to fully emerge. Yes. But do I think somebody's going to emerge eventually? Yes. In terms of being, the quarterback for most of the season, if you will, I think that will happen after a while.
Zeke, it has been 6 straight weeks of 20 to 22-hour days. Training camp is officially over. Thank God.
Yes, listen, the season is here. I'm excited. As you already know, the season brings so many different unknowns and so many different twists and turns, especially last season, as we learned. But it's always exciting and it flies by. Right now it's August. You look up, it's January. So I'm excited to see what the season brings for sure.
Max and I were joking in the locker room. I was joking with him and Butler and both the Butlers and Byron Young, a bunch of guys. And I think that I am as excited as they are that the camp's over.
Oh yeah, listen, that says a lot. So, but yeah, like you said, the season's here. Camp is over. The dog days of summer are over. The last,
but I'm not complaining. I love it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody hears me. I'm not complaining. I love it. But when Dexter says to me tonight, Daddy, come home.
Yeah, listen, from the players to all the media that have been, at every practice this off season, and everybody's kind of happy that the season is here, right? And kind of get this little buffer, if you will, between the third preseason game and week one. It's time. It's here. It's here.
He is my good buddy and my assistant beat writer, the one and only, the great Ezekiel Trezevant. I'm Hondo Carpenter. Thanks for joining us, everybody. God bless you. We'll see you next time on the Las Vegas Raiders Insider